Good morning, 7th graders. You are in week 2, lesson 2. This is the unit Heroes. Okay, so for your do now for today, there's 2 things that I want you to focus on. The first one is, how is the monster scary in this movie clip? The monster is scary because is going to be your sentence frame. The second question is, name 2 heroic things Percy does in this clip and explain how they make him heroic. So your sentence frame would be, one thing Percy does is, this makes him heroic because. Another thing Percy does is, this makes him heroic because. I want you to pause this video, take a second and write down those sentence frames. Number 1, monster scary because, leave some space. Number 2, one thing Percy does is, and you can just write down that sentence frame, leave yourself some space. So pause the video. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and watch this clip.
Guys, watch out, this glass! Come on, get out the car! If things getting closer! You don't even need these. Look, man, that was just for show. Follow me! Oh! This way, guys! This way! Come on! Come on! Come on, run! Come on! Come on! We're here! Mom, what are you doing?
This is as far as I can go.
Come on.
I can't go through. I'm not like you.
I'm not leaving without you.
You have to. You're meant to.
Put my mother down!
Percy, go. You're safe inside the gate.
What can I do?
Use the pin.
What? Use one pen and click it.
Okay, so we are going to right now pause this. If you did not finish answering those questions, I really want you to finish answering those questions before we move on. Okay, so our text for today is called Theseus and the Minotaur. The genre is Greek mythology, so you guys should be kind of familiar with this genre because you read a little bit of Greek mythology when you were in 6th grade with Percy Jackson, and it's kind of similar to what you did in 6th grade. So basically, in ancient Greece, people told myths to explain the way the world works. Myths often portrayed brave heroes, vicious monsters, and mythical creatures. The ancient Greeks also believed in powerful gods and goddesses who watched over the earth and intervened if needed. So there are a couple big things here. The first thing is that they told myths to explain the way the world works. Now, myths are just like stories, and they just wanted to figure out why things happen the way they did in the world. So they made these stories to try to understand the world better. The second thing is that they often had brave heroes as the main characters. They usually had really scary monsters and sometimes creatures that aren't actually real. The third thing I want you to notice here is that the Greeks, they used to believe in these powerful gods and goddesses that ruled over different parts of the world, and that they would actually intervene if something happened. So if they think that this guy is being unfair, they're going to do something to him to make sure he knows that what he did was unfair, like punish him in some way. Okay. So the characters you're going to meet in this story, it's a little bit confusing because the names are kind of confusing. Even I don't really know how to pronounce them correctly. So I'm just going to walk you through them right now. If I were you, I would write this down or just have this video up as you read so you can come back to this slide. So the characters in this story. The first one you're going to meet is King Minos. He is a powerful king of a Greek island called Crete. A minotaur, which is half man, half bull creature, kept in a labyrinth, which is like a very complex maze, underneath King Minos' palace. So this minotaur is this scary creature that's kept in King Minos' palace. Aradine, which is I think how I'm going to pronounce it, is King Minos' daughter. So she is King Minos' daughter. And then there's King Aegeus, who is the king of the Greek city of Athens. And he has a son, and his name is Theseus, who is the brave son of King Aegeus. Okay? So lots of people here. Basically, this guy is the king of a powerful city. His daughter is this girl. Then there's this other city whose king is this. And then his son is this guy. And then there's this minotaur that's going to be a big part of the story. Okay, so we're going to watch another video. This one's called Theseus and the Minotaur, which is the story we're going to read. This is basically a summary of what you're about to read, just trying to give you guys an idea of what it's going to be about before you read it. So as you watch, I want you to predict what you think was the purpose of this Greek myth. What is the myth trying to teach about power and heroism? Remember, heroism is like the way someone is heroic or the way someone is a hero. The sentence frame for this one is, this myth is trying to teach us. So go ahead and take a second to write that down. And we're going to watch this video. What is this myth trying to teach us?
After King Minos of Crete defeated King Aegeus of Athens, he demanded that the Athenians send 7 young men and 7 maidens every year to Crete, there to be sacrificed to a savage monster with a bull's head and a man's body called the Minotaur. Aegeus' son, Theseus, volunteered to go as one of the 7 young men and kill the Minotaur. He told his father that on his return, he would replace his ship's black sails with white ones to let Aegeus know that he had succeeded. The Minotaur lived in a maze called the Labyrinth, from which no one could escape. It was designed by the master inventor Daedalus. When Theseus arrived in Crete, Minos' daughter Ariadne fell in love with him and gave him a ball of string so that he could find his way out of the maze. Theseus entered the labyrinth, slew the Minotaur and led the Athenians to safety. But on returning to Athens, he forgot to fly white sails, and his father, thinking his son has been killed, threw himself to his death in the sea, which thereafter became known as the Aegean.
Okay, so a very short little explanation of what's going to happen in this story. I'm not going to go super into it right now, but I just want you to get that summary before you actually read it. Okay. So you're going to have an annotation task on Common Lit like you always do. I want you, as you read, to take note of how Theseus's actions and characteristics drive the plot. So when I see this, I might be like, I don't actually know what this question is saying. And I know a lot of you have been messaging me and saying like, I don't understand the question. So if you don't understand a word in this question, you can always look that up. You guys are at home and you have your computers or your iPads or your phones to look things up. So if I'm reading this, it says, as you read, take notes on how Theseus's actions and characteristics drive a plot. So I'd maybe say, what are characteristics in a story? So, well, really we're looking for what are characteristics of a main character in a story. So basically these are traits to help you identify what role each character plays in the story. So traits are like character traits. So basically like, are they kind? Are they nice? Are they helpful? What type of person are they? So it says when describing a heroic main character, which Theseus is going to be, These character traits may apply: dauntless, strong, courageous, reliable, fearless, daring, tough, brave. So maybe we want to be on the lookout for these, right? You guys can totally look this stuff up. Okay, so after reading, you're going to answer the assessment questions and reread the text and use evidence to confirm your understanding. Make sure you have the right answer. If you can't find evidence, then that is probably not right. So when you guys are looking over your assessment questions at the end, after you've read it and done the guided reading questions, you're going to want to check in the story to make sure you can find evidence to support that answer. If you can't find evidence to support that, then maybe that one's wrong. You need to look at another one and look for that evidence. So what I mean is, when I go over here to assessment questions, it's going to let me. There we go. Okay, when I go over here to assessment questions, the first assessment question is, how does the author characterize Theseus in the story? Cite evidence from the text in your response. Okay, this is your annotation task. So you should have already kind of highlighted places where Theseus's actions and characteristics help drive the plot. So you want to look, how does the author characterize Theseus? What type of person is Theseus? And as you look through this, you might find different things about him. I'm going to look for where he says Theseus, he thinks something is wrong. He says, we cannot let this go on. When it's time to send the next tribute, I will go as one of them and vow this is the last time the Minotaur will be fed to the flesh of our people. So when I do this, I want to highlight this. This seems like a big characteristic, right? He's kind of being courageous here. So I'd maybe highlight this and say, characteristic of Theseus, he is brave. And then when I go to type my answer to the assessment question, I already have evidence here from when I read it. So I would say the author characterizes Theseus as brave, and then I would use this evidence right here to support my answer, and then say this evidence shows me what. Now this is going to be a CER because it says cite evidence in the text in your response, okay? So make sure it's not just one sentence. You should have at least 3 to 4, maybe 5 sentences for just number 1, okay? Same thing for the other questions. I don't want to give too much away, but same thing for the other questions. You want to make sure you can find evidence to support that. Okay. The last thing I want to show you is I went through and did my own reading of this and tried to highlight and write gist statements to understand it as best I could. Because even when I read something like this, it's not a typical genre that I read. I don't really read Greek mythology on my spare time, so I'm not as familiar with it. So when I went through and read it, I underlined every single paragraph and I wrote a gist statement for every single paragraph. Just what happened in that paragraph. For example, you can see here I wrote, King Minos was a powerful man who was respected and feared by people everywhere. So I just kind of summarized what this paragraph was saying and wrote it in a little gist statement. Now, I really encourage you to do this because if I have to do this, I expect that you guys might have to do this too to really understand, okay? Then what I also did is highlighted anytime they talked about Theseus. I highlighted any important things that might happen, especially there's a part where right here, it's kind of cut off, but he talks about if you come back alive, I want you to change the color of your sails to white. This is going to be super important later, and I kind of knew it might be, so I highlighted that, and I'm like, I might want to keep an eye on that, okay? All right. So for the class discussion, this is the last thing. After you finish the text and the questions, I want you to make sure you respond to the discussion question in Google Classroom under classwork, just like we've done before. The discussion question this time is, the ancient Greeks often told myths to explain how things came to be and to teach a lesson. What do we as readers learn from this myth about power? How can power corrupt people? Cite evidence from this text in your answer. So you are trying to think, what is this text teaching us about how power corrupts people? And remember, the word corrupt means like turn them bad or turn someone good to someone who takes advantage of other people. If you didn't know what that meant and you didn't have me here to tell you, you can always open up another tab, definition of corrupt. And you look for it saying like having a showing a willingness to act dishonestly, like you're trying to gain something, your personal gain. So it will tell you what the answer is. So you are looking for what this myth teaches you about power and how power corrupts people. And then you have to cite evidence from this text in order to complete that. And then, of course, just respond to one other person. You guys can go back to the last video from Monday to remind yourselves what the criteria for success is on those class discussions and how to respond to one other person. Okay, that's it for today. Kind of a long one, but I really want you guys to get this, and I've been getting lots of feedback on what you guys need, and I think that you're just forgetting that, oh, I'm at home. I can look things up. I can ask the internet for some help. I can read some summaries about the text. Just take those extra couple minutes to really focus. Don't try to speed through it. Just focus, write down your gist statements. These common lit articles really shouldn't take you that long if you're just really focused. Don't try to speed through it. The scores are still not what we should see. I know you guys can do better. I should be seeing A's and B's, but we're not quite seeing that yet. So make sure you're just taking your time. Make sure you are writing your gist statements, underlining, highlighting, all that stuff. If it doesn't let you do it on the iPad, write it down on a piece of paper. All right. Make sure you guys join our office hours from 1 to 2 on Thursday. So that's hopefully today that you're watching this video. We'll be reading this with you, helping you guys answer the questions, and giving you guys some tips in order to be successful. So make sure that I see you there. If you can't figure that out, you should be emailing jmolina@laalliance.org. Yeah, it's on Google Classroom, so you can just look there. All right. Have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you guys later. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.